Wow, that was too long a break for me to take without explaining what happened. Well, we lost two close friends in the first 3 months of this year, which was, to say the least, extremely saddening and in some ways traumatic. My wife and I still get tearful on occasion and are having a hard time believing that our friends are gone. They'll both be sadly missed. I lost my battle with the Japanese tax office. After more than 10 years without issues, they decided to change their stance on how I calculate my tax for Japan tours. Having sanctioned my original calculation method themselves, the result is that they did not pay me back a substantial amount of tax that they owed me from our 14th fiscal year and have forced me to pay them an additional amount on top of that. What's more annoying is that they leave hordes of tax evading businesses to cheat their way into profit while going after companies like mine that have always put every payment through our accounts and been proud to run a clean business. I lost 2 years of revenue due to the pandemic and was making up for lost ground financially before this setback. Now they've taken most of the profit from our 2024 to 2025 tours, and the pricing for my 2026 tours is already set, so we'll remain behind for a few years. We also had to cancel our third winter tour this year because the Japanese government is promoting travel to Japan without taking action to build the necessary infrastructure and services to maintain the current levels of tourists arriving. The tours I have left on my schedule are run at the best times, but I'm taking a drop in profit to protect potential customers from poorly timed tours. This has all come at the same time as the tax issue, but you know me, it's not going to get me down too much. After all, I'm still enjoying our new house, and now that spring is here, after 24 years of living in apartments with tiny balconies, I'm enjoying working on our garden and watching the plants and trees that we've planted start to flourish. Thanks to the taxman's folly, I decided to put off plans to build a stone patio, but it's not a big deal. I'll share more on this as I create more images and perhaps also discuss my thoughts on the photography-related benefits I hope to gain from specific aspects of the garden. One last thing I wanted to discuss is that this has played a significant a role in the reason for my hiatus from creating the podcast, and that is the format of the podcast. I received some advice from a trusted friend that I might consider changing the podcast to a full video format. I must admit that I now watch videos on YouTube more than listening to podcasts. The audio podcast is an excellent format for people who spend a lot of time in the car or walking and exercising. Some activities lend themselves to having something verbal to listen to. But I don't listen to podcasts like I used to. I still believe in the format, but I have questioned whether there might be a better way for me to interact with you and perhaps even tap into a new audience. I even made some videos based on this advice, but I didn't like how they turned out, so I never released them. The problem is that I wanted to work from a pre-written manuscript, so I've invested in a teleprompter. As I've always done, I'll write out my script first and I'll read it from the teleprompter. This will hopefully enable me to continue to create quality content as I've always strived to do. I'm excited to be back in the driving seat and have several topics to cover first, and then I'll start to revisit subjects that I've discussed over the years, hopefully making it easier to understand the concepts covered via video. When I create a manuscript, I'll continue to post it on the blog, as I know many people simply like to read. However, the content is going to become more visual. So I would like to invite you to subscribe to both the podcast and the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel can be found at mbp.ac/YouTube. There may also be times when I release a video without a post, and you'll still receive a notification if you're subscribed to the channel. So that's it for the update on what I've been messing around with. Let's jump into the main topic and look at the highlights from my January Hokkaido landscape photography adventure, including a recorded message from each of the guests that we did on the last day of the tour. So I have here 45 photos that I want to walk through, and I'm going to do some annotation so that we can actually see some of the things that appeal to me about the photos and the locations. So we start off in the heart of Hokkaido in a beautiful place called Biei. And out there, I'm really looking for the nasty weather. And what that does is, with a photograph like this one, you'll find that without the snow, it's really not, to me, worth photographing. The background in this location has distant mountains, but they're not pleasant mountains. They're just like the wooded general low mountains that just kind of get in the way. But here we'll see that the snow in the background has essentially erased them, and it allows this copse of trees here to just stand out on the top of the hill. So we have the lines coming down here and this one here that I just love to see. And they're of course very, I don't know, minimalist. I mean, I call the tour the minimalist photographer's dream, and that's really one of the main things about it. At the same place, we have, I call this Martin's tree quite conceitedly. The area has lots of trees that have names. To the right of where we are at this particular location, there are 3 trees called the parents and child tree. And you can't really see the base of the trees. I don't like them photographically, but this tree I've shot a lot over the years. And it's a favorite just because it's got this other line of, let me do another annotation. So it's got this line of trees across the top, these here, that I find appealing. And on this particular day, of course, we had all of these crows that decided to take off. And they caught me sort of by surprise. I was using a 2-second timer. With most of my landscape work, I use a 2-second timer so that I can start the timer and then remove my hand so that I don't introduce any vibration into the camera while the photograph's being shot. And because I was in that mode, when they started to fly, I had to hope that I could get as many in the frame as possible as soon as the 2-second timer expired. This is the result. I would have liked more because there was probably about 1.5 times more than this, but it still works, I think. Next up, we have another tree that we stop at to just really by the side of the road. And again, I'm really, with this image, I love this line here where you can see the shadow of the tree, but then the snow in the background that is not under the tree is a lot brighter. So yeah, this area here is much brighter, and therefore we get again that lovely darker part of the shadow under the tree. And I include these shrubs that are sort of bare in the winter. I just like to see these. Most of the images are in black and white, but if I show you a before after, you'll see that the only thing it's really doing is neutralizing. There are some colors here, but I prefer it just in black and white. I could, of course, neutralize this more just by doing a white balance off the snow, but I prefer black and white. And here, this is a 3-image stitch of one of the huts up the top of the hill in that area. And again, we've got all of the detail here in the middle. The rest is really just supporting and that beautiful subtle transition between the snow and the sky. Here again, we have a dip where we've got the shadow underneath the trees. And this is a derelict house. It's been derelict for a few years now, and I just like to photograph this. I also like the triangle that we get here, and you'll know some of the people that work with me more closely via the Patreon platform, including my friend Christian Mehrman, will know that Christian loves triangles, so I can never really talk about triangles in photos without thinking of Christian. Let me come out of the annotation mode. So I also have a few images that I've left in color, and obviously for this one, the reason should be obvious. There's apparently aluminum that is, a mineral that is sort of in the water, and it gives it this blue look. And we go before the sun comes up, which gives it an even more blue look. But you'll also notice that, we've got some nice blues in the ice that's forming around the falls. And on this day, I went wide for this shot and included the warm lights in the town as well. And this is a close-up shot at 223 millimeters, just a close-up of the falls. This guy here this is like a profile with the brow here and then his nose. And it used to have a bottom jaw, but it fell off a number of years ago. So it's not quite as obvious a profile as it used to be. But again, the blue in the water is quite stunning and lovely location. So again, this is the same tree and hut that we looked at earlier from just a slightly different perspective. I also like to do this with just the occasional bit of vegetation sticking out of the snow. And of course here, I really liked this area here with the spiral that kind of just gives me as a nice additional graphic element. And here, again, I've left this in color for obvious reasons. It's simply a late afternoon sun. And we were hoping, I've just noticed a whole bunch of, this is from the boosting contrast that I've done. I need to get rid of these dust spots. But yeah, we were hoping for some crepuscular rays, and didn't really happen. There's a little bit of it showing through, but not the best for that. And here we went up the ski slope at Mount Asahi, and I have tried just shortly before I went on this trip, and also in the first few days while we were there, we got talking about the Orton method, and I don't know who Orton is. I should look it up, but this is a straight shot of the trees that I love to photograph at the side of the ski slope, taking care not to get in the way of the skiers, of course. But this is just a straight shot that I always do. This is just actually this is a documentary thing. I wanted to show you that there's a cable car running through there to take the skiers up the mountain. And this is in camera a double exposure. And this is resulting in essentially the Orton effect, where you do two exposures and merge them together. I did it in camera here, and I really quite like the effect. Very dreamy, and it make a nice Christmas card. And this is a second shot, an out of focus, and another one in focus, and I merged these two in Photoshop to give a slightly more subtle look than the in-camera one. I know that this may be more appealing to some people. I really am on the fence on this. I think this may be a little bit too much, although I do like the look that we've got there. This one is much more subtle, and perhaps even to the point where you may not even really be able to tell why it's got a bit of a dreamy look about it. And I did the same thing here. So this is a scene out of focus, the in focus one, and this one is a merge of the two in Photoshop. You can, if you want, just use one image and just make a copy of it, add a Gaussian blur, and you've got your out of focus image then, and overlay the two in a very similar way. So you don't necessarily have to photograph your two images like this. And here is the torii, or the Shinto gate in the sea, that we love to visit. I've done a contrasty black and white here because I love to see the detail in the cloud. If I show you the before after, you'll see that it was quite a contrasty day. The water was in the top of the water was getting some sun from over the top of the cliff behind us, and the foreground wasn't. So it was quite difficult in that way. But I like the results with the high contrast. But of course, I've lost the color of the gate. I'm not sure that I need it for this shot. What I have done, if I show you this, is I've done quite a lot of playing with the channels. So if I just click on the red here, you'll see that changing the red channel to be very bright has given us this lighter color to make it stand out more. And I've got a change on the blue channel as well that adds a little bit more contrast in the sky. And this is the shrine behind. When we're looking at this, we are basically directly in front of this, and this is a shrine. There are some steps there under the snow, and occasionally you'll see fishermen or people come along and walk up those steps, throw a few coins in the box, and pray mainly for the protection and the safety of the fishermen that go out to sea from this port. This is just a view of the steps that lead up to the summer houses and the observatory and the restrooms, I guess. And in summertime, I'm sure these get a lot of use. In the winter, it's not very practical. Don't see that many people down here in the winter anyway, but it's a nice area for swimming in the summertime. And this is a beach near here that we visit, and I love to photograph these tetrapods with a 1 second to 2-second exposure. And what that does is it allows the water to draw out. I normally try to catch the swirls in the foreground because we have water. There's a stream. So there's a stream that flows down into here like this, and the water that comes from from the stream mixes with the water from the sea, and that sort of gives us these wonderful patterns. I don't use a timer here. I use a cable release because you have to release the shutter at a specific moment. You can't guess exactly what's going to be happening 2 seconds from when you start a timer. So here I use a cable release and release the shutter instantly when the timing is right. And of course, I'm also looking at things like this wave in the background starting to form. And I've got a number of examples of this. So again, we've got the swirliness, we've got waves happening in the background. When the waves that are coming in to the foreground here, like these here, this is all stuff that it's just normally black sand unless we wait for the specific time. So patience is somewhat required here, but also, we normally end up shooting a few hundred shots as we try to get something with the optimal swirliness in the foreground water. And here's another example. Let that res in. Yeah, so again, a nice wave across the back with some swirliness in the foreground. And here's one last one. I kind of like the triangle that we've got formed here again. There you go again with the triangles. So we then started to head back to our bus, which was parked just off to on the road in front of this beach. A lot of volcanic sand in this area. There is a large volcano just off the shore in the Rishiri Island, and that is making a lot of volcanic sand in this area. And here's the Torii or Shinto gate the following morning. This time we have obviously the color. There was a slight dusting of snow, and the sea wasn't as high or rough as it was the day before. I prefer it when there's water around the base, but I thought this was worth shooting, and I did a long exposure of 40 seconds so that we could get the sea sort of like a cotton candy sort of look, or candy floss look in the sea. Here's the gate, the stairway again leading up to the summer houses, and this time it's a snow-filled sky. And again, it was actually snowing. You can't see it here. I do have a slow motion video that I probably should have got out for you, but it's not really worth going and fetching it now. These are the fish drying frames. This is the only location that I added to the tour based on Michael Kenner's work. When I first went up to this area some 15 years ago to do a trip, basically to find the locations that we visited, I had my Michael Kenner book with me and found probably some of the gates, the fish drying frames that are in one of his Japan books. We do, of course, get permission to photograph them, and you shouldn't be really photographing people's property without permission, so we always do that. And this is what I call the boat graveyard. And in the distance here, you can see this is the Rishiri Island, which I mentioned. That's essentially just a big volcano. And I love it when we get these really nasty skies. Again, I mean, I have brought out the sky quite a lot. If we, you can't bring it out from nothing, but this is the original. Of course, exposing to the right, as I always do, so that it looks, you can make it look more dramatic by underexposing the image, but the snow should really be almost white. And I like to make it that way. And because I've got the information in the image, you can bring it out quite easily in post with a black and white conversion. And I've also here on this one, if I hit the M key, you'll see that I've got a linear gradient mask across the sky. And I have essentially just done, added some clarity via that. And there's a pretty harsh S-curve to bring out the sky as you see it here. And same sort of thing, just a little bit further along from the boat graveyard, different boats. These are gates that are on the side of the hill to hopefully stop the snow from avalanching down into the road. At this time of the year, this year, there was not as much snow as there usually is, so these were showing through. I've been up there when these are all just completely buried and all you can see is mounds. It looks like a mogul ski course. So there's more boats in the harbours. I love doing this with the boats that are out of the sea on stilts for the winter. If you leave the boats in the water, most of the time, because they're not using them in the winter months, you risk having them crushed by sea ice that can come into the harbour. It's more something that happens a little later in January to February, but they get them out of the water ready. And this is another harbour. This is the Sawyer Harbour, and again, just looking at the boats in the. These are the small rowing boats at the side of the main harbour. And here we had a little free time, so we went for a walk one afternoon. The weather was a little bit too good for the main photography that we wanted to do, so we had a walk around and photographed the reflections in the port at Wakkanai. And shortly after I did the interview that I posted in January or February from the hotel room, we turned around and noticed that we got a full moon rising. And these down here, if I zoom in a little, this wind farm is actually over by the harbour, the fishing harbour, which is down here. And if I go to the next photo, this is from the boats out of the sea on that harbour, and you can see again we have the wind farm in the background there. That's the boats in the same harbour head on. And on our way down south towards the last location that we photograph at, we decided to go into an underwater observatory, and it's probably the last time I'll go because you can't see anything. It's like, I don't know what I was expecting, but it was open, so I'm thinking, well, you must be able to see something. You can't. All you get to see is the algae in the water. But I kind of like this this sort of sci-fi grungy feel of this image, but it's not worth going down there if you want to get photograph under the sea. It was worth going down there when we found some jellyfish that were lit in quite extreme light, and a number of very high ISO, 6400 ISO shots helped to sort of maximize the fact that we'd paid to get down this underwater observatory. And one of the last things that we do, we visit boat yards and things in this area, but one of the highlights for me at the end of the trip is to visit this location where we have this copse of trees up top of a hill. Unfortunately, there was little snow. I think it had blown off. I need to do some dust removal here again. But I love this copse of trees up here. And this is again a panorama of multiple shots. And there's another one. You can see a lot of the grass showing through, but we had a bit of a sunset at the end of I think this was probably the last day before we started to head back to Tokyo. So that's the images. I'm going to close this down because I also want to play you the audio, the message that we recorded from each of the guests on the last day. So here we are at the end of the 2025 Hokkaido Landscape Photography Adventure. In Hokkaido, of course, we are sitting on a bus with 10 talented photographers that I've really enjoyed working with over the last 12 days. And we're going to get a comment from each of them. Could you say a few words?
Gary from Melbourne, Australia. Martin's the perfect host for a tour of Hokkaido in winter, even if he does like nasty weather.
Thanks.
Mark Hopgood from Tasmania, Australia. We have thoroughly enjoyed the last 12 days with Martin and Yukio, and especially liked BA, and the photographing in heavy snow is to die for. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, would you like to say something?
Phil Evenden from Boston. As a relatively new photographer, I learned so much here watching and listening to different people's conversations about photography, and it was a fabulous experience for me.
Oh, thanks.
Gary Hook from Round Rock. It has been a blast this last 12 days. I have enjoyed everything about the trip, the hotels, the locations, the food, and I have learned a great deal regarding composition, and it has been a joy to do that.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks. There we go, David.
I am David from Seattle, Washington, and I'm on my second MBP tour, and it's been a blast and even better than the first, and I really enjoyed both the Shinto Gate and the boat graveyard, so I hope to come back and do a third soon.
Brilliant. I would love to have you back. That's cool.
Hi, Mark Interante from Austin, Texas. I thought the tour was amazing and learned a lot from both Martin and from the other participants. I really enjoyed the secluded snow nature landscapes and the Shinto Gate.
Yeah, excellent.
Hi, I'm Jan from Melbourne, Australia. I've loved the snow, and each day has been totally different to the day before. I've learnt so much from Martin and from my other travelling companions, and I would love to come back one day. It's wonderful.
Like I said, bring your smiling face and I'll pay you to come back.
Witnesses?
Hi, this is Susan, and I'm from Ashland, Oregon. My goal for this trip was to take 5 pictures of solitary trees. My goal was exceeded. I have at least 100, and I'm really very satisfied, and I have signed up for next year.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's going to be great to travel with you again.
Hi, I'm Bill Bunton from Austin, Texas. This was a great experience for my first time in Japan. Lots of opportunities to photograph in the snow. The Shinto shrines were just wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to say anything?
Yes. Hello, I'm Yukiko from Yokohama, and I'm assistant of Martin. And first of all, I would like to say thank you very much for everyone, every hotel and bus driver, every restaurant, and I really enjoyed this tour. Thank you very much.
Okay. So finally, let's give our driver Takashi-san a round of applause for taking us around the island. Okay. Thanks, folks. Okay, wonderful to hear everybody again there. And I want to just mention that I have taken the landscape trip off the roster for now. I want to try, and there's more demand for the wildlife trip. And in the next video, we're going to talk about what we got up to in the on the wildlife tour for this year. And I'll provide some dates and that. Then you can, if you go to mbp.ac/tours, you can take a look at what is available right now and book for either of the remaining wildlife tours there. Okay, so thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of the new format, and keep in mind that the production should improve as I do more. If you enjoyed our chat, please give me a like, and I'd love if you could subscribe to the channel at mbp.ac/YouTube or using the buttons below if you're already there. I'll see you again soon. Have a great week. Bye-bye.